Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert, and on this channel we talk Kanye West. And today we're going to go through some Kanye tweets revolving Orthodox Christian iconography and his trip to Haiti. So starting off, you can see that Kanye said, "This is who we really are," and it's this picture of, I'm thinking Moses with the tablets that he brings down from the mountain, right? And this kind of kicked off this huge spread of just iconography, right? All this iconography. And you can see that the skin tone of a lot of these figures is not the white skin tone that they're usually depicted with. Oh my goodness, speaking of white skin tone, as I just brighten the screen, you can see Moses here, and this is the picture of Moses used on Wikipedia, which I think, Wikipedia is not the ultimate source, but it's the resource that I think most people will go to or click through. And to have this picture of Moses as just like a very, very, very white man when he was born in the Middle East, raised in the Middle East, and probably not white. It's just interesting that this is the picture. And this has tended to be the default in the wake of, I guess, like Caucasian culture being the dominant culture in a lot of civilization over the last few 100,000 years, that you just get figures like this, like Jesus, being whitewashed entirely in their depictions. So for Kanye to say, this is who we really are, I think it's not only getting at this idea of there's pigmentation that's incurred in these figures throughout the world that have been whitewashed, but also getting probably somewhat at the idea that Nick Cannon was getting at, or that Jay Electronica has gotten at, that black people are the true Israelites or the true children of Israel. I mean, he hasn't gone so far as saying that, right? But just given that he has been in Nick Cannon's camp, maybe it's too simplistic to make that comparison, but you can maybe start to make that connection in this, or at least just saying we have been important figures over the course of history and throughout time. And the media only wants to depict us the way that we have been shown in America and forced to be in America, not who we have been historically, right? Which I think is a very powerful statement, whether you go to the Nick Cannon, Jay Electronica view, Farrakhan view on things, but just the idea that the history of black people is not defined just by their experience in America, but so many people in America tend to just think about it that way, just mostly, I would imagine, through the education system and through how American history is presented and depicted, rather than how global history is presented and depicted in classrooms, right? That it's easy to forget things like this and to limit the history of black culture and black people. So Kanye kind of going that route. And you can see that there's an article that whatever this is posted. That's enough, Mr. West. Kanye confuses Twitter with stream of Eastern Orthodox icons. So that was also something. I saw some people on Twitter talking about how this was Orthodox Christianity, and that there's an interesting thing about Kanye heading down the path of more Orthodox Christianity versus, I guess, other forms of Christianity. I don't know anything about Christianity, so I can't really comment on the differences there, but you can just see some of the icons, such as this one is Saint Benedict the Moor, had noticeably black features, suggesting that West's deluge of religious posts may have been a continuation of his earlier sharing of black people in art. And I love how Kanye spent his morning posting Orthodox icons. I'm not sure which of our nun friends have been praying for Kanye, but I do think it's working. Kanye sharing this dope icon was not what I expected. And then some people, of course, weren't happy. And this is just silly to me. Kanye is about to appropriate Orthodox icons for profit. He's posting imagery that he's into, and they're saying that he's appropriating it for profit. Like the church hasn't been appropriating the church for profit for all time. Bothersome when people make that argument. But this is also just in line with what Kanye has done for a long time, right? Like back in 2018, you may remember that Kanye was posting a lot of images from different art books from performance artists, just being like, look what this guy was doing, look at this work from this guy. I mean, he's been showing off strings of his own work preceding this. You could see that he's just showing off different samples and things like that. Kanye, I got to interview Joe Perez, who had been head of creative of Donda, and I worked with Kanye for a long time, and he actually first got in to help Kanye run his blog. And he told me that he was up in Rhode Island. He would go to the Rhode Island School of Design library and pull out all these books that were interesting design books on architecture, fashion, cars, furniture, yada yada, and they would just take photos of those, and he would mail those to Kanye or email those to Kanye, and sometimes send the books themselves, and Kanye would be doing the same. So this is kind of just in line, I think, with whenever Kanye is on some kind of trend, he devours imagery around that topic as a way of just kind of, I think, stewing in the topic, learning about the topic. He's a very visual person. And I think looking at things like this is just his way of connecting with it. And then he shares it with us. Like his blog was a lot of posts just like this. And these were a couple of my favorite. Like you can see this one, and this thing's like this angel standing on this guy's chest, which like just the top part alone is striking. But when you have that bottom part of standing on his chest, I just think that's very cool. And then especially with the sword poised. Ooh. And then this one here was another one, The Ancient Days, which is actually by William Blake, like the poet that you probably had to read like his Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. Like there was the Chimney Sweep and the Tiger and the Lamb, that William Blake. So this was actually something that he had made, which is kind of cool. And you can see some of the different versions of it here, but I just think that's like very striking, has some kind of like Attack on Titan, Neon Genesis Evangelion imagery to it for me. But you can see at the top here, like all of this kind of culminated with the next day, Kanye shares this picture saying, Haiti is where our people started the first revolution that freed us from slavery. And I don't know if it's a purposeful continuation, but to go from all these like ancient images to then something like this that's a bit more modern, I thought was really powerful, and also kind of connects a little bit the past, like the ancient past to the present past. And then Kanye goes from like art, ancient art, to more recent art, to actual people. Like these are real people standing there, the same way that you had real people fighting, and like these were depicting real or fake people. But I just think that's a very powerful thing to do, to go from like ancient art, present art, to the reality and living, breathing people here and now. Man, which may be me reading too much into it, but it's still the progression that I see. And Kanye says, we're here to complete the revolution. We are building the future. And so the Haitian Revolution is something that took place in 1791 and spanned all the way to 1804, and was the first like uprising, the actual war, kicking out the French and the French rule, but then also having to establish independence. So it wasn't just the slaves uprising against the slave masters, but that actually continued on to the actual independence of the island from French rule, which is pretty awesome. But one of the main things that I think that this might appeal to Kanye, and you can see him pointing out specifically the first revolution that freed us from slavery. Kanye had talked about at TMZ back in 2018, when you hear about slavery for 400 years, and it was all of you all there, that sounds like a choice. We're mentally enslaved. And there were some levels to that. The initial gut level reaction people had was just to look at it as, oh, you're saying that the slaves back then chose to be slaves. How could you? How dare you? Which, yeah, it is a dramatic point to make. But Kanye's saying for 400 years, when he had talked about, 400 years later, we're buying our own chains on St. Pablo, and also talked about on New Slaves, this comparison between historic slavery and modern day slavery all falls down. He does the same thing. Kanye has for a long time compared present day commercialism, consumerism, present day society having a fiscal and mental enslavement aspect to it that was a continuation of the physical enslavement from 200 years ago. And America, right, is only really 400 years old, which is what Kanye is kind of getting at when he says, when you hear about slavery for 400 years, it's not just the physical slavery of the 1600s to the mid 1800s, right? It's also the mental slavery and fiscal slavery and consumerism, so like all of the slavery that has spanned out of that or spawned out of that initial slavery, to where it's not just saying like the slaves chose to be slaves back then and we're good now. It's saying even still today, there are people choosing to be slaves by accepting the status quo for what it is. Kanye making that point, again, stirs up a lot of emotions, but he said it was all of you all. And that gets at both, you had all these people on a plantation that outnumbered the family that was there, outnumbered the people that were controlling them, but still they didn't rise up, where you can see that, where? Social stratification. In 1789, Saint Dominique, SD produced 60% of the world's coffee, 40% of the sugar imported by France and Britain, which is kind of wild. The colony's white population numbered 40,000, mulattoes and free blacks 28,000, and black slaves an estimated 452,000. So the white population was 10% of the slave population. And it said this was almost half the total slave population in the Caribbean, estimated at 1 million that year. Enslaved blacks, regarded as the lowest class of colonial society, outnumbered whites and free people by a margin of almost 8-1. So it was with those numbers that when you read on, it talks about that people were becoming aware of this imbalance in the numbers and that there was a storm coming, so to speak. And not just here, but in other places where slavery was a thing. So in the fact that the slaves in Haiti finally got sick of the situation and rose up and won this battle against the people that were in control was a huge, huge thing. As you can see, it was the first revolution, like the first slave revolution, and was successful in establishing Haiti as a independent nation, which took a long time and still resulted in a lot of death. But I think you can see why Kanye would be drawn to this, because while you see how he's been critical of what's gone on in America, even though freedom didn't necessarily equate to freedom, as Kanye's made the point several times, when you look at how he views the current situation or the current system that America has, he's not very happy with it. Him looking to Haiti as a place that had revolution and is continuing that revolution, I can imagine why he would draw such interest and such power from Haiti, saying we're building the future, we're here to complete the revolution. Like, that's awesome. And Haiti has continued to be a developing nation, right? Only having 200 years really of existence, it makes a difference, especially with how remote the island country is. You didn't have quite the same British influence on infrastructure that America had or Canada had with the French and English both being in Canada. So there's still a lot of development to happen in Haiti as in all the Caribbean, right? As opposed to in America. Like, things are so fixed in America at this point that it can be very hard to try to build anything new, develop anything new, much less deal with the cultural constraints that are in place in this country and the political constraints that are in the country. You have somewhere like Haiti that still is developing, that still has, I would argue, a lot more potential to what can be done there, just because it isn't as established as American culture is at the moment. Or you look at Australia or New Zealand, these are more fixed places, more developed and established places, where Haiti is still kind of finding its way, so to speak. So Kanye, he said in this talk that he was going to meet with the president of Haiti because he wants to build a city in Haiti, which seems reinforced then by saying we're here to complete the revolution. Like Kanye, I mean, he had talked about building cities in the past, right? And I always thought he was going to start in Wyoming. But this is somebody that has never really wanted to go through his own system, which seems like a limiting thing describing Kanye. But you go back to the Sway interview, right? Where Sway was like, Kanye, why don't you just do everything on your own? Why do you need a Nike? Why do you need an Adidas? Why do you need a Facebook or whoever else to back you? Why don't you just do it? And he's like, how, Sway? How? Like, you haven't been doing what I've been doing. You haven't seen the limitations. Like, Kanye's trying to do things on this much larger scope and scale. And you need resources, you need backing, you need partnership for that to happen. So I get why he just doesn't want to start small on his own, right? And if he was going to build a city, how I expected him to do on his property in Wyoming, that would be much more on his own. It's very on brand for Kanye to go to Haiti and just be like, hey, can I build a city? Like, I'm going to bring in all these resources. I'm going to bring in all these people. I'm going to create all these jobs. And we're going to build like the first modern city, right? That's pretty powerful and seems in line then with what Kanye would do, just finding a partner, but looking to go global rather than just limiting now to where he's at. It seems like that 2020 vision, right? He's thinking more about the world at large rather than just Chicago, LA, New York, Atlanta. He's building out from those things. And not that there's anything wrong with those places, and I'm sure Kanye still wants to do things for those places. It's just he's not staying limited to America at this point in time. So him going out to Haiti is pretty cool. And you can see, I think Team Kanye Daily has more of kind of the collection of photos, him on the boat, kind of going around the island, Kanye seen dancing in Haiti, up and moving, right? Go yay, go yay, go yay, go yay. And then here he's kind of rapping, but you can't really hear much of what he's saying. And you can see that people have like welcome Kanye shirts on, welcome Kanye West, which is kind of cool. And one last photo, and Kanye eating some sugar cane. And then he was just back stateside. After that, it looked like he went out and had a date night with Kim. He's taking photos of Kim. So Kanye had a few days in Haiti. There hasn't really been an update, at least that I've seen, on further plans for the city. Just like, I don't know if there's been an update on the factory that Kanye bought in Chicago, but we'll see what happens with Haiti. And I do really like this idea. I do like Kanye, I don't know, just exploring the world and what he's taking away from these experiences and how it's going to hopefully inspire and infuse the music. And speaking of the music, real fast, where do we mentions? Where's this Boo? Here. Great interview, Boo. As he talked yesterday, Boo did a Rolling Stone interview. Is there any chance we'll still get Donda this year? It's coming, which is an easy thing to say, right? You don't want to say like it's scrapped, it's canceled. Just be like, yeah, there's hope. But he also didn't have to answer. So the fact that Boo's just like, yeah, it's coming, it's a thing, at least gives a little bit of hope. So we'll see. And then I guess that's all that I got. If you want to support us, the easiest way is liking, subscribing, commenting, as all of those things tell YouTube that this is a channel people enjoy, and then they show it to more people, which goes a long way for us. And then speaking of subscribing, we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're currently at 8,700 some. So if you want to help us out on that march to 10,000, that's much appreciated as well. And then the thing that we're most well known for is our lyrical analysis of Kanye West, our podcast, right? And we currently have a season available on Apple, Spotify, wherever, our College Dropout season. And it's our second time through the College Dropout. We've gone through Kanye's discography once and we learned a ton, and it made us want to go back through a second time just to apply everything that we learned and make connections that we weren't able to make. Like when we were going through College Dropout the first time, The Life of Pablo wasn't even out yet. So being able to talk about it with The Life of Pablo out, with Ye and Kid See Ghost out, there's a lot more there to kind of put that album into context, and a lot we learned over the course of the process. So currently, we have the College Dropout season available for free, but we are recording new episodes in our late registration season and releasing 2 episodes a week on our Patreon. And our whole catalog is available on Patreon. So every album that we've done, you can go and listen to, where on the public feed, it's just going to be one album at a time. Like when we finish the College Dropout, those episodes are going to be removed from the public feed, and the late registration episodes will start rolling out one at a time. But if you want to hear all of our older episodes and all of our new episodes as they release, then go to patreon.com/Kanye Podcast, and it's just $5. We recorded our crack music episode today, and that's actually going to come out tomorrow if you want to hear that. And I guarantee it will change how you listen to Kanye forever. You know, it's a third eye open. Anyway, that's all that I got. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.